Speaking of miracles, last week I was reading a story about a first grade teacher who was reading the story of the Three Little Pigs. I think most of us know the story of the Three Little Pigs, right? Okay. She had come to the part of the story where the first pig was trying to acquire some building materials for building of his house. And so the pig went up to a man who was wheeling a wheelbarrow of straw along the road and said, "Pardon me, sir, but might I have some of that straw to build my house?" And then the teacher asked the class, "And what do you think that man said?" What do you think that man said? Yes, okay, sure, right, all of those things. Well, a little boy in the back of the class raised his hands and he was going, oh, I know. And she said, "Okay, Johnny, what did the man say? And he said, well, the man said, 'Holy bleep, a talking pig.'" The bleep was my own for being somewhat discretionary there. So what would you say if you came across a talking pig? Would it shake you up just a little bit, maybe? Would it challenge some of your deepest held beliefs about what's possible and what's not possible? Would you even go so far, perhaps, as to consider it a miracle? My dictionary defines a miracle as something that can't be explained by natural or scientific laws and is therefore considered to be the work of a divine agency. Something amazing happened. God did it. Now this morning, as we said earlier, we're kicking off our Lenten sermon series based on Reverend Mike Slaughter's book titled Made for a Miracle. Slaughter says that miracles remind us that there's something more to this life than simply going to work, paying the bills, and playing a little golf on Saturday. We want meaning in our lives. We want anything that pulls us out of sometimes feel like the deep ruts of everyday life, which sometimes, now probably not y'all, but sometimes includes our faith. And so we love the idea of miracles. And we love the idea of having a powerful faith, but for thousands of years, magicians, sleight of hand artists, and con men have amazed, delighted, and robbed us blind because we don't always see what we think we see, do we? And then on top of that, science teaches us that if we can't repeat something in a lab, well, it's not provable. And so it's likely a trick of some kind. So it's no wonder when we hear about miracles in the Bible, like in our text for this morning. What we're really thinking about and waiting for is God to wave a magic wand and pull a rabbit out of his hat. But but folks, I don't think God wears a hat. And God is not in the magic business. He's in the miracle business. And by the way, in case you didn't know this, you and I have a role to play in most of God's miracles. Have you ever given that any thought? That you can do miracles. You were created for it. You were made for it. Now, if we believe that God is all-powerful, he should be able to do miracles, but us? No way. No way. But what if we could? What if we could do miracles? Do you suppose that would change things? Well, in the weeks ahead, as we walk the Lenten road together, a road that leads us past Calvary's cross, we'll take a look at the possibilities of miracles, for without the miraculous power of God, what are we to make of Easter Sunday and the tomb that stands empty? And friends, for some of us, that empty tomb and that resurrection miracle is the line in the sand as far as our faith goes that we haven't been able to cross yet. Because, well, we're sophisticated and we don't believe in miracles. But Slaughter contends that miracles are real and far more common than most of us believe. And further, he says that we, you, me, we were made for miracles. But we'll get to that in a moment. Let's take a moment and be in prayer. Gracious and loving God, miracles. Wow, is that a lot on our plate this morning? But we're going to give it a try. But we know that we're not going to be able to understand your word about miracles to us if we're not open to it. So we pray a spirit of openness this morning. Open our hearts and our minds and our ears to what you have to tell us this morning. And I pray this morning that I can find a way to get out of the way so that it's your word and your message to your people that comes through. Amen. I don't need to see a show of hands. But let me ask you, do you believe? Do you believe in miracles? It seems to me that Lent is the perfect season to take a look at the miraculous. To really understand Easter and the resurrection, you and I need to be open to the possibility of miracles. And you'd think that the wonders that modern science has shown us, from the marvels in the heavens above to the wonders and the mysteries of our bodies within, you'd think that the world would have increased its awe and added to the understanding of infinite possibilities. But instead, the world seems to have grown even more jaded to amazing things. We see it every day. What's the big deal? Too often we don't want to know details. We don't want to know about things. Just show us how to recharge our electronics and what pills to take to stop the pain. What more do we really need to know? Well, to have a faith with power, we need to know that God is at work in the world. He's not on vacation, and he certainly has not quit. And when life spins out of control, and maybe it doesn't for you, but sometimes it sure does for me. When it spins out of control, we can be reassured knowing that God has worked wonderfully in days past and that he's still on the job. Now this morning, as far as miracles go, we're going to talk about a more or less simple little miracle, if there is such a thing, taken from the Gospel of John. It's not as dramatic as walking on water or as impressive as it would be to feed thousands of people, but it's Jesus' first miracle, so maybe he's just warming up. Maybe this little miracle impresses me so much because it wasn't done in a packed temple, and it wasn't done in front of huge crowds. It was done reluctantly and quietly and behind the scenes. It took place at a wedding. Alyssa, have you ever done a wedding where somebody spontaneously made 180 gallons of wine? Right?
Not yet.
Me either, but sister, I want that one. Now, yeah, I'm getting some amens from the choir. Simply put, in the course of the wedding feast, the family ran out of wine. Now, today they just closed the bar down. A lot of people would probably leave, but they just closed the bar down. But then it was a serious breach in hospitality. And such a thing happening was absolutely unthinkable. But, like moms everywhere, Jesus' mom knew what to do. She turned to her son and said, "Take care of it." I am paraphrasing, but that's basically what she said. Now, Jesus said, "Mom, come on. It's not my time yet, okay?" she ignored her son and told the servants, just do whatever he's about to tell you to do, because I'm sure he's going to. Now, I don't know if the Son of God, co-equal player in the Holy Trinity, Messiah, future walker on water, and stiller of storms, rolled his eyes and said, Mom, not in front of everybody, or if he just did it. Regardless, he told the servants to fill up those purification jars sitting over there. And then when they were full, he told them, take a cup from one of the jars and take it to the feast steward. And when the steward tasted the wine, he marveled that they had held back such a vintage, such an exquisite vintage until the last. Usually you did the cheap stuff first, or the good stuff first, pardon me. You do the good stuff first, and by the time you were out of the good stuff, your taste buds were dead, so you drank vinegar. But anyway, when the steward tasted that wine, he marveled that they had saved the good stuff till last. You don't do that. You get the good stuff up front. You hook them first. Take that, Napa Valley. Jesus can do it. Now, I have to confess, as far as miracles go, that this miracle is somewhat of a troublesome story. Usually the reason for Jesus' miracles, it's obvious, especially those relieving human suffering, but this miracle seems different. Jesus was on a mission to save the whole world, so he and the disciples take a week off, hang out at a wedding feast for a week, and he makes wine when people are starving. What's up with that? It hardly feels worthy of Jesus at first glance. Why would he do that? Now, some scholars feel that it was purely a symbolic act. They question whether it actually happened at all. They think of it as kind of a dramatic parable to show the power of Christ to bring excitement and renewal into human life. Other scholars say this is a beautiful way of showing God's care for the common happenings in life, meaning that God is concerned about all the details of our lives. God knows how many hairs are on your head, right? Still others say that this miracle is God's way of saying that he's ready to celebrate life with us. I love that. That he rejoices in our happiness and our celebrations. I really love that. But rather than argue with any of these interpretations, I'll just say that at least to me, it's more important to rejoice at the miracle and to think about the moving parts that caused it. To be specific, how many people do you need to make a miracle? The devout might say that one's enough. Miracles are God's business, so only God's needed. Now, the non-believers, on the other hand, might reply that it's a moot question since there is no such thing as a miracle. But the heart of this sermon, and it seems to me of Easter morning, lies a conviction that miracles are a fact of life. And we need to recognize them, rejoice in them, and expect them to happen. Is that you? Is that what you do? So to those who argue that the miracle is God's province alone, I think their definition is too limited. If we took the time to consider specific miracles in Scripture and those that we have personally viewed, we'd discover that God often uses human instruments to bring a miracle about. Now, if you think about it, the miracle at the wedding feast really began with Mary. Now, scriptures don't give us a lot of insights as to the general thinking of Jesus' mom. We're told that after the shepherd's visit, Mary treasured all these words and she pondered them in her heart. And again, a dozen years later, following the remarkable experience at the temple in Jerusalem, it says his mother treasured all these things in her heart. Now, Mary knew many things about her son. And a lot of it must have confused her. But one thing is sure. She knew that he was different. And she knew that he was special. So when the word slipped out at the wedding, the feast, that refreshments had run out, Mary knew what to do. The text is clear. When wine gave out, the mother of Jesus said to him, "They have no wine." Now, from anyone else, "they have no wine" might be a statement of fact. But from a mother, the tone of voice says, "They have no wine, so what are you going to do about it?" Very clearly, Jesus got that message. He responded not to a statement of fact, but to the implied request for help. "Why are you asking me?" said Jesus. "It's not my time yet." But Mary pretended she didn't even hear Jesus' objection. See, from the human point of view, hers is the style of many a mother who, while you complained that you weren't going to go to school today while you were sick, she just went ahead and packed your lunch. But from a faith perspective, Mary was doing what you and I need to do more often. She focused on the positive, and she dismissed the difficult. And "it's not my problem" excuse that many of us use when we're faced with problems the size of mountains like poverty and violence. Now, friends, I'm not convinced that she knew what Jesus was going to do. But she knew he could do something to make a difference. And she expected him to do it. So it seems to me that Mary was the first agent of this particular miracle. The second major players in the miracle were the servants. Now, I'm not sure if they were impressed by the authority that people were beginning to see in Rabbi Jesus, or were just intimidated by Mary. But one way or the other, they did exactly as they were told. And if you think about it, what they did was remarkable. Because the pots which Jesus ordered filled, they weren't containers of drinking water. They were jars for purification. Vessels that held the water to wash guests' hands and feet. So when Jesus instructed the servants to take a cup of water from those jars and deliver it to the steward of the feast, he was risking a great deal. Offering water in a place of wine would be, well, that'd be bad enough. But it took a lot of trust that they wouldn't be serving the feast steward a cup of water that had washed the dirty feet of the guests. That would have been bad. But when the steward sipped from the cup and announced it the best wine yet, the miracle was complete. We know the power belonged to Jesus. We get that. But we don't always think about the miracle also belonging to Mary and to a small group of servants. Luke 9 tells us that Jesus called his disciples, and he gave them power and authority to drive out demons, to cure diseases, and proclaim the kingdom of God. In other words, as part of their call to faith and action, Jesus gives believers the power and the authority to do miracles. In fact, in John 14, he tells them that they'll go on to do even greater things than he did. Slaughter says, remember, God is in the miracle business. But miracles usually have two components: divine intervention plus human initiative equals the miraculous. God nudges. We react. The truth is, all miracles aren't huge, are they? But all miracles change lives. Sometimes the human involvement is so routine, so taken for granted, that we hardly even know that a miracle occurs. Sometimes you and I are privileged to participate in small yet very real miracles every single day. Yet we shrug it off like it was nothing. Have you ever experienced an unexplainable impulse to call someone? Or to send a card or to send a note to someone and then had them tell you the first time they saw you that your call or greeting card came just at the right time? And they asked, how did you know that I needed something like that at that very moment? How could your timing be so perfect? Do you suppose that's merely coincidence that you felt the urge at such a special time? Do you think that such coincidences might happen more often if we were looking for and ready to respond to those nudges from God? Friends, you and I live in a world and at a time where miracles are badly needed, but seemingly are in short supply. Our culture and our educational process trains us to apply a hermeneutic of suspicion, to be skeptical about anything we can't explain, even our own generous impulses. So it's hardly surprising that we question the miraculous even in our own actions, right? That's why it's so important that people of faith like us, who believe deeply in love and compassion and service to others, should be sensitive to our potential as agents of the miraculous. Many prayers are left unsaid or are spoken timidly because we have been conditioned to expect nothing. James 4 says we expect nothing, so we ask for nothing. Many nudges, some grand and some ordinary, are never started at all because we don't have the faith to dare to even try. We Christians ought to be an expectant people because at least we say that we believe in and follow a God who has the power to set the world right. Do we really believe that? Or not? If we do, what are we doing about it? Now, you might disagree with me, but it seems to me that much of what we call living today is more about existing. Just getting through today, just putting one foot ahead of the other, and for a lot of reasons. But faith leads me to believe that Christ is standing by to set our lives on fire with joy and celebration and the determination to help others do the same. And just maybe he's waiting to be asked to perform the greatest miracle of all, to come into our hearts and make that change in us. Let me leave you with a simple question. If I believe Jesus can change ordinary water into a delicious wine, what can he do in my life if I'll just let him? May the journey of Lent help us find the answer to that question.